All right, good evening. Happy Monday. My name is Hiram Figueroa. I am the founder and the host of LinkedIn Perspective. And today we're going to have a special guest. And the special guest is going to be able to identify with quite a few things here. And pretty much the reason why I say that is that I had to put my stuff on mute on the phone. And the reason why I say that is for a couple of things. We have quite a few things that are pretty much it figures. Pretty much we're going to be going with that as well. Pretty much hold on just a minute, John.
Sure.
Just sorry about that. Pretty much what we need to have a discussion, and the discussion today would be workplace violence and aggression management with my co-host, and we've developed a relationship, John. And John, would please introduce yourself and tell them a little bit about yourself as well. Okay.
Well, yes, I'm Dr. John Burns, Center for Aggression Management CEO and founder, and a proud Navy veteran on the first nuclear-powered submarine, the USS Nautilus. I started the Center for Aggression Management 3 decades ago because I realized that we were reacting to everything from violence to sexual harassment to abuse to discrimination, bullying in our schools, all of these things, we are reacting to them. And so we wind up with victims and perpetrators, and everybody loses. So I set out to identify a solution. And I've always believed that only when you can measure something can you truly manage it. So I started looking for measures. Darned if I didn't find them. And I built CAPS on the basis of those measures.
So, John, tell us what the whole purpose of our podcast is, and what would you like to share to the audience?
Well, okay? I've had an awful lot of people, Hiram, reach out to me and want to know more about this thing I call CAPS, the Critical Aggression Prevention System, and how you can, with scientific reliability, actually prevent violence, assaults, sexual harassment, abuse, bullying, discrimination. How do you get out in front and prevent them with scientific reliability and without violating privacy regulations? Well, that's what I want to share with people tonight. And if you have questions, we want to address those questions. So write your questions in the chat, and Hiram will stop me along the way if necessary, or we'll answer all the questions at the end of this. I'll make a little presentation that kind of outlines what this is all about so that you can walk away from this so that you can have takeaways that you can take and put in your pocket and go out and use.
Awesome. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share this slide, and you're going to take it over, John. So go ahead. You have the floor. And
all right. Sounds great. Well, as I said, I'm going to introduce you to the Critical Aggression Prevention System. And I'm often asked, why is it that you say you can do this when nobody else can do it? And here's what I'm going to share with you in this little presentation is exactly how I do it and why I can do it. We started out with very unique origins. It took us down a very unique path, and it produced very unique solutions and results that literally nobody else has. And you're going to see by the time I finish this presentation, you're going to see why that happened. I often ask employers, if I took 50 random employees and put them in front of you, could you, with scientific reliability, tell me who the next bullier, abuser, sexual harasser, discriminator, or even violent person might be? The answer was no, they can't. And because I use that phrase, scientific reliability, I'm going to dedicate an entire slide to exactly what that means. So how do we do it? Well, the FBI for years have been able to get out in front of violence because they have what they call identifying someone on the path to violence. Well, we build off on that. We call that the identifying the sequential successive precursors to violence, which enable us to not only get out in front of violence, but also sexual harassment, abuse, bullying, and discrimination. You'll see this in a moment as we go into a little bit more detail. Sometimes we simply refer to as emerging aggression. So this gives us the ability to get out in front and prevent these from occurring with, again, scientific reliability. So these are not just opinions. This is founded in science, and we don't violate privacy regulations. Again, I'll get in more detail, explain how that works. Now, I want to just digress for a moment and talk about mental health, because if you listen to the media, they're telling us that if we all just got mental health assessed, we wouldn't have this problem. Well, that nothing could be further from the truth. After the horrific shooting at Virginia Tech, where 32 people lost their lives, a lot more were injured, the President of the United States gathered the best of brightest of minds on this topic, and they came to the conclusion, as you read it here, most people that are violent do not have mental illness, and most people that have mental illness are not violent. In fact, the shooter at Virginia Tech was mental health assessed 3 different times. And in each and every occasion, he was deemed to be depressed and anxious, but not, I repeat, not at risk of hurting himself or others. Not far from where I live in Orlando, Florida, was the Parkland shooting. Nicholas Cruz, the shooter, was mental health assessed by the Florida Department of Children and Family. And he was deemed to be, you got it, not at risk of harming himself or others, just before he took 17 innocent lives. And lastly, on this topic, I want to bring up Jared Lee Loughner. You may remember he was the guy who shot Congressman Gabrielle Gifford. You may not remember that 6 people lost their lives in that event. Now, here's a guy who clearly had a thought disorder. He was probably schizophrenic, one of the scarier of mental illnesses. But we know that of all schizophrenics, 0.2%, that's not 0.2, that's 0.2% of schizophrenics have murdered another human being. So how do you get from 0.2% to this is your next murderer? You can't. That's been the problem with mental health all the way along. They play an important role, but identifying who the next shooter is not one of them. So the indicators that we use are human-based. That means, and they're intuitive. So they're easy to understand, easy to learn, and easy to utilize. We do not use mental health for the reasons we've just mentioned, so we do not violate HIPAA regulations, hospitals, healthcare, and on college campuses. Further, we do not use culture, gender, education, age, sexual orientation, or religion. So we do not violate FERPA on our school campuses, and we do not violate the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Why is all that so very important? Because to do so means we can now record and track aggressive behavior with a certain impunity. Now, bipolar, I'm being asked about bipolar. This translates into aggressive behavior that we can identify. It enables us to engage and diffuse, and these are human-based. We do not get into mental health professionals. There are people who work with that on a regular basis. We refer those to mental health professionals. We deal with aggressive behavior and aggressive behavior solely. So it gives us the ability to record and track all of this aggressive behavior with that certain impunity, which is unheard of today. Now, how do we implement something in an organization? Now, I want to point out that you can have this for individuals, or you can have it for organizations or institutions. So how do we do it? We have 3 components. 2 are training, 1 is software. Some people want everybody trained with all the skills, but most typically they want a 2-tiered system. So here we have aggression first observers. These are people on the front lines of aggressive behavior. They are taught not subjective references like scary, strange, weird, and menacing that take you down a rat hole of he said, she said, but objective, measurable observables of human-based aggression. then they put that in an app and it goes immediately to certified aggression managers who are further trained to engage and diffuse and redirect. And that's going to be an important element that I'll go into in a few minutes. Then we tie all of this together with a bow called the meter of emerging aggression. It enables us to forensically record and track all of this aggressive behavior through a CAPS mobile app and dashboard. Now, again, remember, we don't violate HIPAA, FERPA, or the Civil Rights Act, so we can record and track aggressive behavior with a certain impunity. So what was it that we discovered 30 years ago that made all this difference? We discovered there are two kinds of aggressive behavior. One we call primal, the other we call cognitive, and they'll make simple sense to you. Primal aggression is built on the primal instincts of fight or flight. It is fueled by adrenaline, that connection between aggression, the production of adrenaline, the increase in the heart rate, and the resulting body language and behavior that we can both identify visually, but we can also measure it. When I was working with the military, we were using infrared. And if we could get a square inch of skin, we could identify a person's pulse rate remotely and watch it go up and down based on the stimuli. This is hard science, but it also represents someone losing control, i.e. the adrenaline rush, right? So what do we expect to see in the extreme? We expect to see the red-faced, ready to explode guy. Isn't that an amazing image there? Well, but this represents someone losing control. What about conscious, deliberate aggression? It doesn't fit. So we searched the universe and we came up with cognitive aggression. Cognitive aggression is conscious, deliberate aggression, or non-conscious, in that someone repeats it often enough, they no longer give a lot of thought, and they become a vicious person. This is fueled by intent. Quite simply, what is your intent? The intent to do harm. That's the key. Intent to do harm. What is your intent with this person or persons? Is it in your interest and theirs, therefore a win-win as it ought to be? Or is it in your interest and to their detriment? You're victimizing people, you're becoming a victimizer. The next level, and I'm going to go into all the details. There's a baseline in 9 stages, but the first grouping are the victimizers. The next are the predators. They want what you have, but they don't want to give you value for it. So they're going to canagle themselves out of you, get it from you in some way or form, or steal it from you, which is called criminal intent. The highest level of cognitive aggression, the 9-stage cognitive aggressor, is the perpetrator of murder, suicide, or terrorist. Let me introduce you to Zaccharia Moussaoui, often known as the 20th hijacker.
Right.
And,
so, John, real quick.
Sure.
So I'm just going to share this real quick before you. If you people like this segment of LinkedIn Perspective, subscribe it, share it, like it, tag it. Feel free to make the comments, because this is pretty much a conversation that needs to be addressed based on, we had this conversation, correct, John? For the fact that Donald Trump has been assassinated attempts twice. We've had a lot of active shooters. And now what you're doing is educating everyone, the profile of looking at things to be an awareness. So go back to it there, John.
No, excellent setup for it. Yes. What we've come to realize, when you look at these two facial expressions, you see they're quite different. The sad fact is that most security and law enforcement think the guy on the top is their most lethal guy. But the guy on the bottom is far, far more lethal. You see, we've come to realize that no matter what your culture, gender, education, age, sexual orientation, or religion, if you're a human being and you rise to the intention, that's the key, the intention, where you're prepared to give up your life for a cause, your body responds to that intention by losing animation, what you see here. In other words, the body says, I'm dead, and it takes on that look. The military call it the 1,000-yard stare. Others call it dead eyes. But it's more than mere facial expressions. The whole body language and behavior loses animation. And why is this so important? In the case of the Trump attempted assassinations, or these shootings that we see happen far too often, that person comes to the scene with his look. And why is that so important to get? Well, because there's a thing called the moment of commitment. The moment of commitment is that moment when an assailant decides to pull that weapon and start shooting. From that moment of commitment to when the first round is discharged is just 2 seconds. No security, no law enforcement, no matter how well equipped or trained, can reliably be on scene in 2 seconds. So, ladies and gentlemen, you're on your own. If you're the target of this active shooter, you're on your own. And that's why this is so important. We need to be able to get out in front of that horrific moment of commitment. And here's how you do it. You get out in front of it because you have first observers in your parking lots or your parking garages or stationed at strategic points. So they get to see this person because there's nothing they can do about it. They will come to the scene because it is built upon their intent. There's no way for them to avoid it. In the terrorist handbooks, they say, create a smile. What is a smile? The corners of your lips go up, but you still have that dead eye look, and it jumps out at you. It doesn't matter if there are thousands of people around you, this thing jumps out at you. And it gives you the opportunity. It may only be moments to get out in front and prevent that from occurring. Yes, Hiram.
So, John, for people that are pretty much self-conscious about this, what tools are you giving them in the toolbox when they come across somebody? How can they keep it simple to be able to be an asset when they see a situation like that? That's my question.
Well, the answer to that question is be aware of it. It'll jump out at you. It's hard not to see, but become aware of it and be prepared. I mean, we teach people how to engage and diffuse if it's at all possible to diffuse. You may have to wind up mitigating, but if there's a mustard seed of rationale still in this person, understand that we know that it is not instinctual for one human to attack another. You have to disconnect, depersonalize, turn this person into an object in order to attack them. This individual goes a step further. They disconnect from their own well-being. That's why they take on this profound calm. This is why they're so lethal. They can actually blow themselves up with their own children in the back seat. That's the kind of people they are. But if they have a mustard seed of rationale, we teach people how to engage and use that mustard seed to bring them back to their reality.
So, John, here's the other question before moving on to that. So, sure. Explain to the people here in the United States how different it is, because you've been doing this for almost over 30 years, right? And then here's the thing. There's a lot of tyranny out there in the Middle East, and then here are active shooters here in United States, right? What's the biggest difference that general public is lacking with the awareness? Is that they're not taking it seriously? Because you've done their studies, but I think you need to expand it in a little bit in a simpler reason for them to understand. So go.
Well, yes. When we come to an active shooter, what is the response to an active shooter? It's called active shooter response training. What are they being trained to do? Respond to an active shooter who is already murdering people, whether they're your employees or they're students in a school classroom, or they're your friends in a wedding where it's being crashed by people. The ability to identify this behavior, it may only give you moments, but it gives you the ability to try to mitigate these circumstances or diffuse this aggressor who's very difficult to diffuse, because and our whole system is built on identifying these people at stages 3 and 4, so they never get to the point where they're 7, 8, or 9. That's the key. That's the takeaway we want to offer people, which of course brings us to our continuum that shows how to do that. You see, we have a trigger phase and we have an escalation phase. Now, this is on the primal aggression side, is on the right side. The left side is the cognitive aggression, which is the intent-driven aggression. So on the primal aggression side, we have triggers. We all experience these triggers. You get up late. That's a trigger, a little explosion going off in our heads. You go in for coffee and breakfast. There is none. Now your stomach's grumbling. You get 3/4 down the driveway and it's garbage day and you forgot the garbage. You jam on the brakes, grab the garbage cans, drag them to the street. Now you get into morning traffic. We all go through these things. The difference is we cope. As long as we're coping, everything is copacetic. But when they stop coping, when one trigger begins to build on top of the next trigger, we enter into what we call the escalation phase and mounting anxiety. Why? Because mounting anxiety changes us. It changes our body language. It changes our behavior. It changes the way we communicate with each other. We can identify these changes early on, well before it ever gets up to that violent stage, and prevent it from occurring, from escalating from there. Also, you'll see that there's a low risk, a moderate risk, and a high risk illustrated here. Why is that so important? Well, at the Parkland shooting, there were 45 calls made on Nikolas Cruz's bad behavior to the school district, to the local sheriff's office, and even to the FBI. And no one felt the sense of urgency enough to have prevented that from occurring. And 17 people lost their lives that day. So how do we change that? Well, it brings us to that old saying about see something, say something. We've all heard thousands upon thousands of times. Well, humans tend to do what they perceive as in their best interest. They don't see it as in their best interest to get involved, so they don't. It's that simple. So how do we change that? Well, when someone is in stage 3 and they see someone go to stage 4, they're not just going from 3 to 4, they're going from low risk to moderate risk. And if you do nothing, then you might be at risk. Also, if you identify someone in stages 1, 2, and 3, when it's the easiest to diffuse them and redirect them, and you do nothing, they could get to 6 or 7 and you might become a victim. So now they have the impetus to get involved, and they do. That's the key. They do because they see it in their self-interest. Yes, we need people that are more selflessness. We need more of it, but sadly, it doesn't permeate through our culture. This builds it in. The next thing I want to share with you that's exciting is that at stage 4 of cognitive aggression, again, the intent to do harm, starts sexual harassment, conflict, bullying, abuse, and discrimination, and excessive force. All of these bad behaviors start at the 4th stage of cognitive aggression. Why is that important to understand? Well, because if you call something sexual harassment, doesn't that represent someone exhibiting sexual harassing behavior? You already have a victim, you already have a perpetrator, and both lose. So what we have that's important is we have the precursors to those bad behaviors. So by identifying someone at stages 1, 2, and 3, you can actually engage and diffuse them and redirect them so they no longer have an interest in becoming sexual harassers, conflict, and you have saved them. This is an important element. The problem with our systems today, what do we call them? Sexual harassment, abuse, bullying, discrimination. They're all punitive systems. They're designed to identify an offender and punish that offender. So nobody wants to share that because they know that person's going to get hammered and there might be retribution against them. So they don't want to share. In our system, they're rehabilitative. We're identifying people before they become an incident to redirect them to a better, more constructive path, but it still addresses their issues. So we've prevented any subsequent incidents or violence from that person. So now they appreciate what we've done for them. They're happy that what we've done for them. So people are more likely to share that information because they know that they're saving that person, not harming that person.
So John.
Yes.
Very quick. So
Sure.
This would help people. This will help people to understand the dynamics of this narrative, right? That you are not suffering from silence. You can give them some coping skills, some mentoring devices, or narratives for them to understand the dynamics of what's going on, and they can be able to execute it instead of going through their flight or fight situation where they're pretty much paranoid. So a lot of people are they're not understanding because they're not living in the moment. Now there's a lot of mass shootings, right? I could say, let's go back to Uvalde, right? Uvalde shooting back in Texas, right? 45 minutes passed by and then nothing was done. Even law enforcement, you had Border Patrol, CBP, ATF, until the other tier level federal agencies showed up, but they didn't execute that well. So what is the biggest dynamic that you can share for law enforcement, but especially in a situation like that for the public? So go ahead.
Well, the key to remember is that if you're responding to an active shooter, this is someone who's already murdering people. They're already dead people. Yes, there's already dead, dying, and or wounded victims. Yes, they may have saved more lives because they were arrived, but often these things already occur. The person often, when they're this 9-stage cognitive regressor, then they've already killed themselves as well, and it's all over by that point. So how often have you heard that someone took their own life after killing mass shootings? Too often it's the case. So often they don't come until after the whole event is over. That's the sad part. That's why we have to use these skills to get out in front and prevent them from doing that. Now,
so now that the holidays, real quick, one more. Now that the holidays come in, you've been doing these case studies right now. What is the pretty much peak time? Everything is unpredictable. Now I'm learning from you. You've been doing this for a long period of time, so you've got it down to a pattern. On the narrative for this, when do you think there's peak times for these type of behaviors? So go ahead.
Hiram, I don't know that. I'm sure there are peak times. If we did all the calculations, would find that more people are murdered at a certain time of the year than others. But in Chicago, they're dying every weekend. So I don't know that that really gives us meaningful data points here. The fact is, what we're trying to share here is that we're trying to share that you can identify this kind of behavior, give you a chance to protect yourself and your family and people around you, than as opposed to just have to affront an active shooter. So can we rely 100% on body language and behavior? Of course we can't. So we have a thing we've developed called a judicious interview. The judicious interview uses scientific cause and effect principles that enable you to ask specific questions or take specific action that produces a predictable result if someone's intention is to harm. You see, that's kind of our secret sauce here. Our ability to identify someone who has an intention to harm, and not only their intention to harm, but where they are on this continuum. Are they stage 3, 4, or 5? So that we can apply the corresponding skill set for that level of aggression and maximize our results without ever being accused of excessive force, because we're staying within a system. Again, it's all founded in science. So then we have the trigger phase, and we get to the crisis phase. What do we expect to see on the primal aggression side? Someone spiraling out of control into panic and/or rage. Can this person be lethal? Of course they can, but most typically, this person can be diffused by simply removing the object of their anxiety. However, on the cognitive side, these people become tactical. And when I say tactical, I mean they've identified their target and they're committed to the destruction of their target. And because of that, they will exhibit behavior and body language that'll help us identify who they are. At the 9th stage, we have the perpetrator of murder, suicide, or terrorist, whose goal it is to give up their life for a cause. And their body language and behavior will reflect that intention. I often tell security and law enforcement, you do not want to approach a 9th stage cognitive aggressor in uniform. Why? Because there's a high probability they will instantly start shooting, or if they have explosives, they'll push that button, killing everybody in the blast range. The 8th level is the murderer or combatant in a military sense, who is prepared to give up their life for a cause, but intend to survive. And that changes their behavior so we can identify them. At the 7th level, we have the complicit tactician, completely complicit with the 8th and 9th level. They want certain people to die, but they're not going to kill them, nor are they actually going to put themselves that much at risk, because they're going to inspire other people to do that, like the late Osama bin Laden, or a terrorist handler, or in a domestic sense, an accomplice. Each is a precursor to the next. It may only give you moments, but it is a precursor, giving you the chance to get out in front of the next. But here's the key, Hiram. We have a 6th, a 5th, a 4th, a 3rd, a 2nd, a 1st, and a 0 baseline. And no matter where you are on the planet, remember, we're looking at human-based behavior. So no matter where you are on this planet, we're now looking for aggression deviations from that baseline. It's all founded in science.
So that's awesome. So
yes,
real quick. So,
sure.
So I know you're, how much in today's society do they utilize social media as a tool, a form of intimidation or leverage to this type of behavior? You have all these levels of breakdowns, right? You've been able to do the studies. We've been able to review that. But I've noticed that there's a pattern when they've been able to use social media or, study these locations with social media. How do you, what's your take on that? Let me ask you that.
Well, I mean, it's simple. When you and I were children, we put on a mask at Halloween, which is coming up, and we could get away with almost anything because we were wearing a mask. And to this day, a lot of parties are all built around masks because they're trying to mask the personality of the person. So you can act differently than what you would if you were face to face or eyeball to eyeball with someone. Well, social media has taken over that role. You can say things to people and never have any recourse from what you say. So it's become a lot more vile on what's now X or Facebook or any of these other platforms because you can get away with it, frankly. And that's why we try to engage with people. We don't do things using anonymity. A lot of programs have to apply anonymity because you don't want anybody to know that it was you doing it. But that sets a whole thing in place where people can say anything they want. And, if I wanted to injure you, Hiram, I could say something horrible about you, and that would put you at risk. In our system, because we're not putting you at risk, we're actually helping you. We don't have to hide anything because we're not stepping on any of those landmines. We don't have to hide anything. So we can actually be out front with everything that we do. And if people want to see the data, we can share it with them. Now, a company may choose not to do that, and that's their prerogative, but you don't have to do that.
My other question to you would be,
sure,
when you go into the stage, remember we talked about that you have an apps, right? So I think the audience gets to know that, right? And so if you can share that before you move on, the apps that are available for that as well.
Sure. We have CAPS, the Critical Aggression Prevention System. And within that structure, there's the CAPS mobile app and the CAPS dashboard. And I'll get to that here in just a moment. So I'll actually show you what they look like. So if you have, and again, we have them for individuals, we have them for groups of people. So you can have either way. So we want to get to evidence-based. Why? Because everybody bases their decisions based on evidence-based, but in this world, you normally can't because it's all based on opinion. So how do we turn this into an evidence-based result? We have let's call him Johnny, who's seen by a first observer at stage 3. Then we have another first observer that sees Johnny at stage 4. Now we have a trend. Now we have a third aggression first observer that sees Johnny at stage 5. Now we have someone on the path. Now, does that mean he's going to be violent today or tomorrow? Not necessarily. It means that there is a sense of urgency to be involved and change this person's behavior. So we engage with Johnny at stage 5, but we don't just diffuse him, we redirect him. In other words, We know that humans tend to do what they perceive as in their best interest. So our challenge, and we train people to do this, to identify the path that this person is on, anticipate the consequences of their action, make them fully aware of that, then offer them redirecting them by offering an alternative path which addresses their issues that doesn't have all those consequences. What have we done? We have changed this person's direction. They are no longer down this aggressive path. So we can legitimately say that we have prevented any subsequent violence from this person. That's a key. Nobody else can do that. And because of it, let's say we have 100 people go through this program. And we're not expecting a lot of 7, 8s, and 9s. We're expecting to see a lot of 3, 4s, and 5s that we engage with, diffuse, and give them an alternative path so they know it never becomes 7, 8s, and 9s. So if we have 100 people go through, we determine 90 no longer have an intent to do harm. So they're back becoming productive members of the team. Of the remaining 10, 5 are in counseling, 5 have been suspended pending a more thorough investigation. Therefore, we can proclaim that our facilities are as safe as possible, the highest form of evidence-based best practices. Hiram, that's unbelievable. I mean, that's unheard of anywhere else.
So I see that in go back to the clip area where you had the 100 employees. Sure. Real quick.
Sure.
So people can pay attention. So this is pretty much important, right? What's the 100 employees want to go through the CAP system? And because workplace violence and bullying and toxic work environment is pretty prevalent in today's society, what can you share with them on that specific narrative before you go to the next slide? Because you've been doing this, right? But they need to understand this as well.
Oh, absolutely. One of the key elements here, Hiram, we've come to realize that if you are a human and you have a relationship, whether it's a personal, a business, an academic, whatever the relationship might be, if you want that relationship to be genuine and sustainable, you must have an element called trust. And our ability to identify distrustful behavior and diffuse it, i.e. redirect it down a different path, enables you to enhance trust. So by infusing trust into this equation, we not only have 90 productive members of the team, but we have 90 people that are where we have infused this element of trust. We've learned how to engender trust in the people we work with. And by engendering trust is essential for teamwork, leadership, loyalty, performance, productivity, and even profitability. And because of that, we are not only preventing these bad behaviors, we're enhancing productivity and profitability within companies. This is, again, unheard of. That's what's so important. And that's where we talk about it here. I want to chat just a moment, I'll take a side step here a moment and talk about insider cyber attacks. For the last 3.5, 4 years, I have been on the National Sheriff's Association's Cybersecurity and Crime Work Group, where we've had the foremost expert, the elite of the elite cybersecurity professionals come talk to us because why? They want access to our sheriffs. And we have found that they're pretty darn good at identifying hackers and keeping them out. What they're abysmal at is identifying an insider, someone who already has access and authority, someone who a month ago was worthy of your trust, a week ago became disgruntled or worse yet, compromised. And because of an expo, a 60-minute expo, we now know that China is actively pursuing individuals in the US through LinkedIn, Facebook, and other platforms to connect with them so they can compromise them. And future, this person today is going to be treacherous. How can you identify this person? Well, it turns out that we have the one system that enables you to do it. Because once again, humans, it is not instinctual for one human to attack another. They have to disconnect. Well, we can see these disconnections, and I can assure you that someone who's part of a cohesive trust group who's now moving away from that because they're disgruntled or they're compromised will disconnect. They will illustrate that behavior. And they will also just use distrustful behavior as well. So our system, CAPS, has a way of identifying insider, and it's the only system that I'm aware of on the planet that can. Now, I did tell the audience that I would talk to them about scientific reliability. So I want to do that here. Scientific reliability is determined when you can produce the same or similar results over time repeatedly. So we took CAPS to Eastern Kentucky University to their SAT team, their Student Assistant Intervention team. And over a 2-year period, they applied CAPS in its full width and breadth. And what did they learn? This is Dr. Good, who is Vice President of Student Affairs and the chair of that team, wrote this wonderful letter for me. The first paragraph is what I have here, and I give it to you because it's germane. Now that we've had the CAPS, the Critical Aggression Prevention System, in place for 2 years, we've been very pleased with its utility. The CAPS Meter of Emerging Aggression, that's a central analysis tool, has produced evaluations and results consistent with the observations of our Student Assistant Intervention team, most of which had their PhD. That is scientific reliability. But she also wrote this paragraph. Our campus legal counsel is very pleased that we're using CAPS training and the MEA software to record all the information we gather, including actions taken in a clear, concise, and formal way. This says to you that this is something that can pass muster with the general counsels and a lot of the companies. So we talked about the app. Here it is. Here's what it looks like. Understand, number one, you can have an individual app or you can have a company, institution, or organizational app. So what does the app do? It records and longitudinally tracks without violating HIPAA, FERPA, or the Civil Rights Act. Secondly, it displays the level of aggression. You can see over here that we convert that primal aggression continuum into behavior, communication, interaction, demeanor, facial expressions, tactical movement, and other concerning factors. And not only can you see that, but you can see that in the moment you choose something here, in other words, you're witnessing something, you go into these lists, you pick out what is relevant to what you're seeing, and immediately you are transforming that because what you're taking from are scientific, validated as reliable, and they do not violate HIPAA, FERPA, the Civil Rights Act. So by doing so, you're eliminating that as an issue. You also see that it immediately gives you a number, the level of aggression that that particular type that you're putting in there poses. In this case, the highest level is 6. Green is low risk, yellow is moderate risk, red is high risk. So at a glance, you can see the totality of the circumstances and make professional judgments. Then we have the threat level. The meter of emerging aggression gives you the threat level, and you can see here that it's stage 6. Why is that important? Because if you're prepared for the highest level of threat, in this case, stage 6, you will never be caught off guard or blindsided. And you will never, if it also has recommended responses in here. Now, everybody's had the training. They know what to do. But if you're a certified aggression manager and you've been notified by the administrator they'd like you to engage with Johnny, then you have some time to go here and hit this button right here that says, here's what are the recommended responses for someone at stage 6. So you can review those things before engaging so you're as best prepared as you possibly can. Then finally, this does have emergency procedures in them. They're very good. There's Rady-based, so they're really good. But any company that wants to put their own emergency procedures in can do so for a slight upcharge. Now, so what does it look in an organization or individual, in an organization or institution? You have an army of first observers. They see an aggressor. What are they using? Objective, measurable observables. These are frontline observers now, and they put that information into their app. It immediately goes to a dashboard. Excuse me, I need to go back to a dashboard and then to certified aggression managers, Who are these certified aggression managers? They're often part of a threat assessment team on a college campus, behavioral intervention team, but we don't care what you call them. You tell us what you'd like to have, who you think should be the certified aggression managers. Then the administrator assigns one or more certified aggression managers to engage, diffuse, redirect, and conduct a judicious interview. What do they do now? They record. What did I see? How did I respond? What was the result? This is a scientific process, Hiram. It is a scientific process. Now, one case, that's what we call these. One case does not make validation. But 50, 500, 5,000, you're building a validation that will withstand most any kind of scrutiny. Then let's take a quick look at the dashboard, because that's the centerpiece for all of this. Everyone who's going to take the training, go in and become a first observer. That is a one-day online training. Doesn't matter where they are on the planet. They can take that one-day training. It is in 45-minute to hour increments, so that you can do it in a day or you can do it over a period of time. Then those that you want to be certified aggression managers are elevated, and they take an additional one-day training. Again, 45-minute to hour trainings, and they can do it in a day. So all the training could be done in 2 days, or it can be spread out over time as you wish to do. All the existing cases that are in this dashboard, you're about to see what the administrator sees. They're all color-coded. So you get to see, your eyes go right where they need to be to give you the best protection. The administrator then sees the details. That's that button there, and they get to see what the first observer's app looked like, along with all the logistics. They assign one or more certified aggression managers, and then when they do their findings, they put them in here. So it's all managed right out of this dashboard. Then all actions taken are right here in the dashboard. And if I wanted, Hiram, if I wanted you to go reach out to Johnny in 2 weeks, redo that judicious interview because Johnny's had some counseling during the interim, then that's what you would do with it. You'd get that alert with all the information in it. So current programs are reactive. They're notoriously inaccurate. With their mental health, they're notoriously inaccurate. They're too subjective, and they tend to violate HIPAA regulations. See something, say something, clearly is not reliable. Active shooter, I mean, let's face it, run, hide, fight is not a prevention strategy. Finally, so CAPS, it meets, incidentally, all California Senate Bill 553 evidence-based results. Everything that California has put in their Senate bill, their workplace violence prevention program, we're the only people that can actually prevent with scientific reliability. Yes, I am a Navy guy, and yes, I do use lots of colors to demonstrate things. Scientific reliability, it identifies the precursors so you can prevent them. It doesn't violate the privacy regulations. It's founded in science. It's evidence-based, incidentally, in real time. And the technology is intuitive, easy to use. It's inexpensive, and it's fully scalable. Anytime that you can create a system where innocent people don't become victims, perpetrators, aggressive people don't become perpetrators, and employers save incredible amounts of money. Think about it, Hiram. If someone does something egregious enough to be terminated over it, you have a legal process that has to be paid for. Now you go through that fear element for fear that once they're terminated, they're going to go get their 9mm in their car. But then you have to hire a replacement. That's enormously expensive. And then you get to the real expense of training that person up to the level the last person was. It's enormously expensive. So if we can get out in front of these things, we're saving employers enormous amounts of financial costs, but think also about the human cost for both individuals and the company.
So, John, how can individuals get this app? How can you help them? This is a great app. This is a great app for the individuals. And my other question to you, before you continue on, can this app be sent to the first responders also?
Absolutely. You'll see my email address, my telephone number, our website. Email me. And incidentally, I'm just now finishing up my second book. This is my first book. There we go. My second book now is going to be on school violence. And I hope to have it uploaded within a week on Amazon for both hardcover, softcover, and Kindle. And eventually we'll do it on Audible as well. But if you have an interest and you would like more information, then email me or call me and write that information down. And I'm happy to respond to you, answer any of your questions that you think about. You know, if you go to bed tonight and you wake up in the morning, you've got a bunch of questions, send them to me and I'll be happy to respond to them.
So, John, at the end of the day, why is this so important to you and to share this with the audience? And what's the takeaway out of this podcast? Not only for you, but for the audience as well, for these professionals here.
Thank you for asking. 30 years ago, a friend of mine who was a police chief at the time came to me and said, John, I've got a problem. My officers are getting into altercations with my citizens. They're supposed to use their verbal skills, which are too often not enough. And subsequently, they're supposed to arrest, but they get into street fighting. They get injured. I get sued. But I've always believed that only when you can measure something can you truly manage it. So I started looking for measures. Once I did that, once I put primal aggression and cognitive aggression together, and suddenly all of the body language and behavior that we've all known about since the beginning of human history fell into place and became empirical. It struck me, humans need this. Humans desperately need this. And that started me on a journey that 30 years later, I'm still trying to perfect. I got here through trial and error, finding things that worked, things that didn't work, trying new things. I built this, as I said, over a 3-decade period. And now finally I've got the technology. So I'm fully scalable. No matter where you are on the universe, we can help you. Especially if you're in California and you're struggling trying to deal with this Senate Bill 553 and figure out how can you get to the violence prevention, because that's what's required. I mean, the state of California is saying that if you don't have a workplace violence prevention program, then you're presumed to be liable. And you have to prove your innocence. It's a reverse world. And we have the one way that we can demonstrate prevention with scientific reliability. Literally, nobody else has that. And that's what I hope people take away. If you need this kind of help, that's what I both spent 30 years on this journey to do, is to help you with that solution.
So, John, go over your narrative right here and explain just how people can reach out to you. You know, we can be able to support your cause.
Here's my name, my telephone number, my email address, and my website. If you're on LinkedIn, I have posted over 60 articles there. I have over 26,000 first connections on LinkedIn because of those 60 articles and what I've been doing over these last 30 years. So reach out to me. I can be reached on LinkedIn. As you can see there, John D. Burns. Reach out to me and let me help. See if I can be of some service to you.
And as you go into 2025, what's the next level of success that you're reaching based on your books and everything?
I'm going to be on a crusade to get out in front of people. I'm going to be doing podcasts, radio shows, TV shows where I'm invited. My book is going to help. I want people to have this information. I mean, you can come on and you can take my courses and you'll be fully certified in aggression management in CAPS. You can do that. But I want people that don't have a lot of money to get access through this book that I'm producing. I'm going to have I'm going to, the soft cover book is going to go for like $24.95. That's a low price to get what you're going to be getting. And, but the first 100, I'm going to put out at like $9.99. I want to get word out, and I want people to know that this exists, this capability exists. And I want reviews on the book. I want to get these reviews on this and start to build and get the word out, because employers around our country are crying out for what it is that I have. They just don't know that I exist. And that's why I'm doing this. And I greatly appreciate, Hiram, you inviting me on to share this on your podcast with your audience.
Well, John, tell them that you're a Navy veteran. Explain to them how you being a veteran has correlated to this finding. And people think that it's just, hey, you're just doing this, but as a veteran, it speaks in different.
Well, veterans are typically very special people, very special in that you typically can meet a veteran and know almost instantly whether you can rely on them or not. They've got your six, so to speak. I was in the submarine service, as I mentioned initially, on the first nuclear-powered submarine. We all went around with little tags that would tell us if we got zapped by the nuclear power. People used to claim that we went around glowing at night. So, but it was a great experience. But veterans, we tend to be people who serve, like law enforcement, like fire people that are in the fire department, people that are in hospitals. These are people that are meant to serve. And when I had the opportunity, sure, I'm an entrepreneur like anybody else. I need to make $1 like anybody else. But we want to serve. We want to help people with something that I have that happens to be quite special. And I want to get word out there. So anybody that can help me do that, I would, if you got a podcast and want to let me get out and tell more people about this, I greatly appreciate that. And, help me spread the word that there is a solution out there.
Awesome. So if you like this segment of LinkedIn Perspective, share it, like it, tag it. Look up John. John is connected with me, here in LinkedIn. And if you like the segment, subscribe to the YouTube channel, LinkedIn Perspective. And the subject will be aggression management. And down the road, we're going to be able to not only do it on LinkedIn Live, YouTube Live, Facebook Live, but Instagram Live as well. We had some technical difficulties today, but needless to say, the mission, the message was very informative. I want to thank John, and we've been able to create a great relationship. I validate what John says, and I want to be able to continue being his advocate. So if you like this segment of LinkedIn Perspective, share it, like it. John, closing remarks for you, please.
Well, again, thank you very much, Hiram, for your support and help and advocacy here. If there's anything that I can do for the audience, for anyone in the audience, reach out to me. Let me know how I can be of some service to you, and help me get the word out. People desperately need what I have, but they don't know that I exist. So help me get the word out to these individuals.
Oh, so one more thing, John. How can they get the app real quick?
How can they send me an email saying you'd like one, and I'll make sure that you get one.
Awesome. So
send an email to that email address, and I'll make sure that you get one.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much for confirming that, John. So again, if you like this segment of LinkedIn Perspective, share it, like it, tag it, make your comments known. Let it be out there. Let us know what we can do to make a better podcast. And if you like John's information, you want to connect him, he's on there. He's one of my connections, and we'll be there. So John, stand by. I want to thank everyone for standing on and watching this hour segment of LinkedIn Perspective. And thank you very much. Semper Fi, always beside you.